For the most part, the guitar community has basically been a boys' club pretty much since its inception. However, there are some fantastic female guitar players out there. These are the top 11 greatest female guitar players ever. A viewer by the name of Wayne Brown actually asked me to make this video, and we had discussed it back and forth, and he really wanted to know my take on this, and this is actually one that I've kind of had tumbling around in the back of my brain for a while, because as I mentioned, there are so many great female guitar players that just don't seem to get as much credit as they deserve. At least maybe not, for the most part. Recently, I think times are finally changing. This originally started out as a top 10 list. However, once I compiled all the names together, I determined that I just couldn't cut any of them out. So we wound up with 11 of them in no particular order. Let's get to it. Number 1, Nita Strauss. Let's just get her out of the way now, because she is not only a fantastic guitar player, but she is also one of the hottest young rock and metal guitar players on the scene today. As far as the public is aware, she started out life as a member of the tribute band The Iron Maidens, based out of LA. After a very successful run with the Iron Maidens, this eventually garnered the attention of one Mr. Alice Cooper, who eventually recruited her to come play in his band to essentially replace Orianthi, who we'll get to here in just a little bit. Since then, Nita has also released a solo record that, from what I've not heard the whole thing, but what I have heard, I really, really like. She is a very, very skilled technical guitar player. She can play scary fast. Not only that, but she's also the first female guitar player that Ibanez has ever created a signature guitar model for, and that guitar model was one of the hottest new guitars to come out in 2018. Number 2, Orianthi. Speaking of Alice Cooper, prior to recruiting Nita Strauss, he had 3 guitar players in his band, and I know this because I happened to see him live, and one of those guitar players was none other than Ms. Orianthi. Prior to going to play for Alice Cooper, Orianthi had played for pop stars such as Carrie Underwood, and when she was really discovered by the public was when Michael Jackson discovered her, as she was just about to go out and play guitar for him on his final tour before his untimely passing. Fortunately, those tour rehearsals were being filmed. They made it into the right hands after Michael Jackson passed, and we were, even though the tour never happened, we were fortunate enough to get to discover her on the big screen. She's done a couple of solo albums. The first one was very, very, had a very strong pop element to it. I think it was pretty clear the producers wanted to make sure that it sold. But there was also some very, very unique stuff about that record. There was a hit on it called "According to You" that, when it starts out, by all intents and purposes, it was a modern day pop song. Until it kicks in, and when it kicks in with Orianthi shredding like crazy on that guitar, and wow. She has played along Steve Vai. She did the duo project with her then significant other, Richie Sambora, and she's since released more solo work since then. Orianthi is a very, very talented guitar player from Australia. Number 3, Nancy Wilson. Nancy Wilson, along with her sister Ann, are the 2 remaining original members of the band Heart. And Nancy deserves credit for at least having some part in writing just about every single one of their hits. Barracuda is one of the greatest classic rock songs ever. Cover bands all over the world still play it in bars everywhere today, and people still love hearing it. Guitar players everywhere enjoy playing it because it's such a well-written song, and it's not the easiest thing in the world to play either. I got to see them live a few years ago as well, and they actually opened with Barracuda, and to see Nancy Wilson out there open up the show basically by herself with a Les Paul, whatever it was that she was plugged into, and she play that opening riff, the dun 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 dun, and they intentionally slowed it down a little bit. It was one of the heaviest things I had ever heard, and she is well into her 60s at this point. Nancy Wilson, you still rock. Number 4, Jen Majura. I just recently discovered Jen Majura, And here, I think as recently as last week, she appeared on Ola England's channel in one of his Will It Chug videos, and it was one of the most hilarious things I've ever seen. I already knew she was a great guitar player just from from recently discovering her in that manner. However, I did not know much about her personality, and she apparently has quite the sense of humor. I'll link that video down below so that you can check it out because I thought it was hilarious and I laughed through the whole thing. Jen Majura plays in the band Evanescence, and for Evanescence's first couple of albums, it was mostly very, very lyrical based. There was definitely guitars and heavy guitars in it at that, but to me, anyway, it sounded like they weren't doing too much more than playing power chords. They really, really needed a technical guitar player to contribute, and Jen Majura has done just that. She is very, very rapidly gaining a name for herself. Number 5, Lita Ford. Lita Ford could very well be the original female shredder. Lita Ford is a technical monster when it comes to playing the guitar. Go listen to any of her solo records from the 80s. That lady can play her ass off. She is one of BC Rich's, quite possibly BC Rich's longest standing endorsees. She, to my knowledge, is still an endorsee of theirs today. She also has a pretty large collection of rare, hard to find BC Rich guitars. She loves BC Rich guitars as much as I do, which naturally makes me a fan. Of course, her duet with Ozzy Osbourne back in the 80s, Close Your Eyes, was one of the greatest ballads that I can remember from that era. And let's also not forget her time in punk rock music as a member of the Runaways prior to that. Lita Ford had a long, long career, and she's not even close to slowing down. Number 6, Joan Jett. Speaking of the Runaways, we can't talk about one guitar player from the Runaways in Lita Ford and not talk about the other one in Joan Jett. Whereas Lita Ford was the more technically sound guitar player between the two, Joan Jett's strength was her songwriting, and she exhibited everything that the punk rock of that era was supposed to exhibit. It's tough to think of American punk rock bands such as the Ramones and the Sex Pistols without thinking of the Runaways. And Joan Jett was, she brought just as much attitude to that scene as anybody else did. When she began her solo career after the Runaways, she wrote 2 of the greatest rock anthems ever that are still played like crazy and still extremely popular today. I Love Rock and Roll, and of course, I Hate Myself for Loving You, which of course has since been borrowed extensively by the NFL and NBC, as they have since rewritten the lyrics for that and used that melody as their basis for the Sunday Night Football theme for well over a decade now. She's still out there. She's still out there touring. She's still out there rocking, and she ain't going anywhere. Number 7, Susan Tedeschi. Tedeschi. To be honest, I can't remember how it's pronounced, but regardless, the bride of one Derek Trucks is equally as talented of a guitar player as he is. The Tedeschi Trucks band, that of course was formed between the two of them, is not a duo band. It's not a husband-wife band or anything like that. It's merely a blues band with 2 monster guitar players in it, and she was already very well established when they met on at one of the Crossroads, or I'm sorry, actually I think it was on an Allman Brothers tour that she was opening for. She has a really, really unique style that you don't even have to see it's her playing to be able to hear that it's her playing. You can just tell just by listening to her. Number 8, Courtney Cox. No, not that Courtney Cox, but despite the fact of sharing the name with the famous actress and even the same spelling, but this Courtney Cox, if you're not familiar with her, is still a current member of the aforementioned band, the Iron Maidens. I was watching a couple of videos of Courtney Cox prior to shooting this video, and that woman can blaze on guitar. Seriously, this is my kind of gal. She plays Caparison and Jackson and Charvel guitars, and the Marshall amplifiers, and I don't know that I've ever seen anybody's fingers play that fast, that smoothly. The other thing that is really unique about her is guitar players in tribute bands don't generally get a whole lot of attention in the limelight. But not only has she managed to do that, but she's garnered national and even global, worldwide attention, all from playing in an Iron Maiden tribute band. Something tells me that she's going to get snatched up by somebody here at some point. And whatever band manages to do so is going to be very, very lucky to have her. Number 9, Mary Spender. I've talked about Mary several times on my channel before. Mary Spender is also a YouTube creator. She also happens to be an Orange artist, and she is, in my opinion, actually a very, very versatile guitar player as well as a singer-songwriter. She tends to, most of the stuff that I've seen her do tends to lean a little bit more in the bluesy, folksy direction, but she does have a rock and roll side of her, too, that I also very, very much appreciate. Go check out the video of the metal cover that she did with Leo Maracchioli of Dire Straits' Money for Nothing, because that was a fantastic video. I personally have a lot of respect for Mary Spender, of course, as I mentioned, because she is, in fact, another YouTube creator just like myself, and I know just how hard she has to work on that aspect of her career alone. So, again, Mary, much respect and thank you. Number 10, Tal Wilkenfeld. Technically, she's not a guitar player, she's a bass player, but I had to include her. Why? Because not only is she a bass player, but she is a bass player for the legendary Jeff Beck. If you're not familiar with her, search for her on YouTube. You can find her playing with Jeff Beck, among others, all over the place. And she is a great, great, great bass player. That bass is damn near as big as she is, but you never know it because she is very, very skilled, and you can tell has worked very hard at her craft for pretty much her entire life. You pretty much have to if you're going to get recruited into Jeff Beck's band in probably your early 20s. Go check her out on one of the Eric Clapton Crossroads videos where she played with Jeff Beck on that stage. She had to be the youngest person in that band by 30 years, and she fit right in. Number 11, Vicki Peterson. This is a name that I suspect most of you are probably not going to be familiar with. Vicki Peterson was the lead guitar player of the 80s pop rock band, The Bangles. The Bangles were, in fact, an all-female pop rock band that were also all very proficient at playing their instruments. All that really catchy-sounding guitar playing on all of their songs that sounds like exactly like it should have come out from something in the 80s, that's all Vicki Peterson. Certainly every member of the Bangles should all be regarded as great musicians. However, it was primarily lead singer Susanna Hoffs that garnered most of the attention. And unfortunately, as a result of that, Vicki Peterson became the often overlooked talent as the equal driving force behind that band's success back in that era. So if you love 80s pop music, you need to go check out the Bangles. And most importantly, listen to Vicki Peterson's contributions. I think you'll be impressed. So there you have it. That is it for this list. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it as much as I enjoyed compiling this list. I always enjoy doing videos like this. This is a lot of fun for me. Thank you very much to Mr. Username Wayne Brown for the suggestion. Again, as I mentioned, I did very much enjoy it. I am looking forward to hearing your feedback especially. If you have not already, please consider hitting the subscribe button to this channel as well as the bell icon right next to it. That way you make sure that you don't miss out on future videos just like this one, assuming that you did actually enjoy this video. Hopefully you did. I'll post any pertinent links to anything I discussed down in the description as well. And last but not least, as always, please leave me a comment down below and let me know your thoughts. Who are your favorite female guitar players and who may have I left off? Thank you so much for watching. Adios. I'll see you soon.